Hello Latin 4, welcome to week 6 of distance learning. Since we only meet today, Tuesday and Thursday, we're going to be doing just the Latin that you have on that single first page of the attached PDF to this assignment. I'm going to warn you in advance that this is more difficult than some of the other passages of Virgil that we've looked at. Just understand that I have reasonable expectations of how much people are going to fully be able to, for instance, understand some of this. I will be very straightforward. Questions in the Socrative will be primarily just like the meanings of single words as found in this passage. So if you go through this video and make note of things that I draw attention to, you will be just fine. Okay, now, so the background here is, we read last time that Aeneas is now in grave danger. His fleet has been attacked by the storms that were produced by the winds. We're going to be reading just this little passage here today to prepare ourselves next week to read a lengthier passage which contains what is called an epic simile. One of the things you should come away from Virgil with is a knowledge of what an epic simile is and the experience of having translated one. And in order to do that, we first have to set the background. So the background here is that Neptune, the god of the sea, Neptune has noticed that there is a storm on the sea. Neptune, as god of the sea, basically believes there should not be such a thing as a storm on the sea without him knowing about it and maybe even causing it. He is immediately going to be well aware that if there is a storm on the sea that he didn't authorize, somebody, and he strongly suspects it's Juno, has basically interfered in his realm. All the gods and goddesses had areas of responsibility that were considered their lane, so to speak. Well, the ocean is Neptune's lane, and Neptune is going to not only notice this storm, but he's going to be very angry, and he's going to do something about it. So, we start off. Interea magno misceri murmure pontum. Just look at that first line. Literarily, what jumps out at you? That's right. Look at this alliteration, people. M, 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 M. And so is it possible that what Virgil's doing with all of these M's is he's using like the sound like is that like supposed to be like the sound of a storm? So meanwhile, interia, meanwhile. Now, just glance forward, see verbs, okay, like verbs with nice verb endings. There's really only two, right? You've got sensit and you've got extulit. These are the only two actual verbs in the passage. Now, I know that you've already spotted, you know that this ns is going to be an ing form, but Neptune is your nominative singular subject, so he's down in that line, but this is going to be, meanwhile, Neptune sensed something, is basically what happened. Now, what Neptune sensed is going to be pontum, and the pontum is going to be described as misceri. So let's review what that form is. A normal infinitive has an re ending, miscere, to mix. This I, this is a passive infinitive. So instead of miscere, to mix, we have misceri, to be mixed. This is an indirect statement construction. Neptune sensed something to be something is going to be the logical grammar here. What Neptune sensed was that pontum. Pontum just means sea. Neptune sensed, so again, interea Neptunus sensit pontum. Okay, that's really, even though the poetry word order is all messed up, this is the grammar of it. Neptune sensed that the sea, misceri, was mixed. What it's mixed with is a magno murmure, with a big murmur. It's almost like I imagine Neptune's like under the sea somewhere, and he can hear this like almost the low like murmur of the storm, which obviously, if you go up there, it's super loud up there. But from where he's at, he can kind of hear this murmur, great murmur, that the sea is mixed with. Okay, so up until the word Neptunus, we have not yet translated emisamque hiemem. Okay, so what's on the screen right now? Neptune sensed, meanwhile, Neptune sensed that the sea was mixed with a big murmur. So what's going to continue is some other things that he sensed, and also it's going to describe his emotion, and then he's going to do one more thing. So he additionally sensed that hiemem. Hiemem is a funny word. It can mean winter, okay, but it also means storm. And I think this must go back to a time when primarily, of course, it does not snow much in Italy. Okay, they have basically during what we call winter, they have like a rainy season is all, because after all, they're in the middle of the Mediterranean Sea, and it's kind of a moderating factor in terms of their climate. So he sensed that a storm was a misam, sent out. Okay, so it's a past participle. He sensed that a storm had been sent out. Now, this next part here, okay, I'm giving you permission to not even worry about this because it's kind of grammatically obscure. I'm going to show you what it means, but you know, there will not be a question in the Socrative about the words imis, stagna, refusa, and wadis. Okay, so from imis to wadis, basically it means he sensed that the still waters had been poured back from their lowest depths, okay? Stagna is the word that means still waters. We get the word stagnant from it, okay? So stagnant waters. It has a negative connotation in English because like stagnant waters are still, but they're like, that's like a puddle. You would not drink stagna, okay? Refusa looks like the English word to refuse, but it basically means having been poured out. What they've been poured out or back from is imis wadis, from their lowest depths. Okay, so moving forward, graviter comotus. Seriously disturbed. Okay, we actually had not comotus, but we had permotus in book 1 when Felix saw Quintus, whom he had saved as a baby. It said he was permotus. He was very much moved. So he's seriously disturbed, meaning he's angry. And autoprospiciens. Okay, so prospiciens, the root right here means to like look at. So it means like basically like looking out, basically. He's looking out from alto. He's looking out on the deep, okay? And then again, the NS is the ing. Looking out on the deep, okay? And then he does one more action. Extulit, he raised. What he raised is a placidum caput. He raised a calm head. What he raised the calm head from was a summa unda. Basically like the highest wave, but we call that like the crest of a wave. So what you want to almost picture here is, so here's like a wave, okay, this big wave. Neptune comes up from the deep, and he's peeking out right here. Okay, so this is Neptune, and he's like right here. This is him prospiciens, looking out on the deep, you know, and here's like Aeneas's ships and all that. Okay, so this is kind of what Virgil is conveying here. Calling it a placidum caput, a calm head. This is kind of Virgil's way to show that even though there's a storm around, Neptune knows he's the god of the sea. He can make this storm go away in an instant. Okay, so here's what's left of your worksheet. We're going to go through this. There's only here one main verb in this sentence here, and this is going to be that funny thing that we talked about. If you just look down here for a moment, remember the poetic alternative third person plural perfect tense form that we discussed. Okay, so videet. We assume Neptune as the subject, so he sees. What he sees, we need a direct object. Here's our direct object, classem, the fleet. He sees the fleet. the fleet is described as disiectam. Okay, so disiectam is going to describe classem. And just because they're on opposite sides of the line, you're accustomed by now that that can and will happen in poetry frequently. So what he sees is the fleet of Aeneas, Aenei. Interesting, first time we saw the name Aeneas, it was also again in the genitive. Remember, it was the limbs of Aeneas salvuntur are loosed. So here again, he sees the fleet of Aeneas disiectam, scattered. Where they are scattered is toto aequore. We've seen this aequore a lot. This is like Virgil's go-to synonym for the sea. And he especially likes aequore because all on its own, it's a dactyl. And he likes throwing it as the penultimate dactyl. So aequore classem. That's where he's going to throw aequore a lot. So he, Neptune, sees the fleet of Aeneas scattered. He sees them scattered on the whole sea, toto aequore. Here's another thing he sees. Troy overwhelmed on the waves. Troas oppressos. Troy overwhelmed. Where they're overwhelmed is fluctibus. They're overwhelmed on the waves or in the waves would be another option here. Now, Troy, of course, is a city back in Asia Minor, modern-day Turkey, that's been destroyed. So what poetically it means that Troy is overwhelmed on the waves is these Trojan refugees, this is all that's left of Troy. So they actually can now be called Troy. Here's another thing he sees. Caelique ruina, and the ruin of heaven. Meaning, of course, that there's a storm. It's what heaven as the sky is doing to the sea. The final little bit is the concept here. Doli means wiles. Now, if you're not familiar with the English word wiles, it means like the tricks, kind of like even like the nasty tricks that someone might play. You know, this person's wiles are like the ways they're able to trick people and make them do things or whatever. So the wiles belong to, of course, you-know-ness. So latuere literally means like were hidden from. Now, it's an active verb, okay? And so it's going to take an accusative object of the one from whom things are being hidden, or in this case, neck, not being hidden. So not just the wiles, but the irae. He knows Juno's wiles, he knows Juno's angers all too well. He is, after all, her brother. And so, nor were the wiles and angers, you-know-ness of Juno hidden from the brother. Okay, so again, just this here, study it kind of like word by word. Just a few parts are indeed pretty tricky. We are learning this, we're reviewing this part simply so we can then next week enjoy the very important event of studying an epic simile. Okay, so I'm always in the Google Meet if you have any questions. See you there today and see you there Thursday. Please do come in and double check before you hit submit. I would much prefer to talk you through things than to just simply have you get things wrong. Be well, people.